what? Hello, everybody. It's Linda West. Welcome to Living Live. I'm so excited to introduce you guys to Ryan Drew Donaldson. And why am I so excited about this? Well, because he works on sponsorships, and he is an expert with sponsorships. For those who know me, know I've done a lot of fundraising work, and sponsorships has been the absolute most difficult thing for me in doing fundraising. And so I'm really excited to hear what he has to say and share it with you guys. So I'm going to read you a little bit about him. He's been part of the fundraising world for over a decade. Currently, he is sitting as the VP of Alliances and Sponsorships for R&R Resources and is a founder of LearnSponsorship.com, which is devoted towards both reporting of the success of sponsorship acquisition and the certification training of the entire market. Well, welcome, Ryan. I'm so happy to have you here. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I definitely love you. You have an amazing presence, and I'm really excited to be able to help a lot of people here on this website.
Yeah, let's do it because we don't really have a whole lot of time, so I want to kind of just dig right into it. Right. First, I have questions. That. How did you get started? How long have you been doing it, and then what got you into this area?
Well, about 11 years ago, I actually started fundraising in the hardest way possible, which was knocking door to door for Child Protection Education of America, which helps find missing kids. I realized very quickly that it's the most effective. They weren't raising money, and from there I transitioned over into sponsorship just to try and get them additional sums to that. Being one of the leaders of my industry, having raised several millions of dollars for various companies, productions, all of that. And we try to make sure that there's always a fantastic story along with it as far as how we actually get about and do the sponsorship raise, which is one of the major mistakes, and I'm sure that we'll talk about here in a moment, that a lot of fundraisers and sponsorship people do. But there's a beautiful area in which we live in where people don't have any kind of reporting on sponsorship companies at all outside of a new project that I myself happen to be part of. So I got into it because I meant a lot of really goodwill for it. I came originally to be a career artist and I wanted to find something else to do to serve my country. So sponsorship really seemed like a natural fit for me.
That's awesome. And we're going to talk about the top 3 mistakes that people make when they want to go for sponsorships. But I want to talk, before we get into that, I want to talk about the reporting and how important it is to have a proper reporting, so that way when you go to a potential sponsor, you have information for them that can help them decide, do I want to give the money to them or not, right? I mean, is that kind of like the bottom line?
Right, absolutely. So reporting is one of the biggest things that really qualifies the difference between productions, whether it's an event, a movie, a TV show, or whatever. In the world that we live in, social media is very easy to analyze. The way in which people are looking at eyeballs and direct sales, they're able to directly quantify these numbers. So the thing that really separates a production is reporting, being able to say there are going to be 2 million eyeballs that look at this production, per hour, or whatever those numbers are. And they don't always have to be insane. People often assume that the reporting numbers have to be ridiculous. The numbers can be very, very small in some cases. The sponsors simply want to know what they're looking at in an event that's only going to have 400 eyeballs. That's okay. They're going to give you 400 eyeballs of money. But the more that you can show the exact event, like a festival or whatever, being able to show the numbers that happened at the event and what eyeballs were given afterwards is going to continuously raise the value of it. So yeah.
So what do you recommend for somebody coming into it, like they haven't done anything before? I mean, can people get sponsorships right off the bat without having done anything, or do they have to have a track record?
That's a very interesting question, because the answer is actually yes. There are things you can do, and yes, you can get sponsorship before you've actually done something. It is way more difficult. Of course, having a track record is going to increase the value of what sponsorship you can get. Of course, having it is going to make it an easier grand slam. But where people are actually prospecting the money from is actually one of the larger focuses on whether or not they're going to get that funding to begin with. If they are able to show, hey, we've got a strong social media following that we've created in advance, maybe we're doing a press release, we've got a huge network that we just started building up before we've done the event, those components are really going to play in a big part to that. And if they're able to say in advance with the reporting, we haven't done this event yet, and we've already got 5,000 people who are supporting it, we're only asking 1,000 people money. So that it's all about the story that's being told for that.
Okay, well that's interesting. I hadn't thought about it as like people as the money, because you said like 1,000 people money as opposed to 5,000 people money. Like, what is that dollar amount? Like, what is 1,000 people money equal?
Well, it changes depending on the industry. Brand ambassadorships, you're looking at millions of people. You want your DJ Khaled's, your Britney Spears, those kind of, regardless of who those celebrities are, if you've got an event that's doing 500 people, you're not going to get that. But the people who are going to benefit the most, we'll say the people within 10 miles, let's say it's an event, within 10 miles of the event, those are the people who are going to give you the money, not necessarily a Coca-Cola. Or a PepsiCo. So when you're looking for the money that's associated with that event, 1 to 5,000 money is not really that much of a difference. But the real difference is between 1,000 and maybe $10,000 money, and that the dollar sound, or sorry, not $10,000, the 10,000 people money. The dollar amounts can go anywhere from 500 to 5,000 for something that's we'll say a low end production, or tier-wise, I don't want to say low-end because, a festival, a local, especially a smaller town, 500 people is incredible and can be very profitable event. But when you're talking about like a major festival with 1 million people or something in comparison, that's when you're going to see sponsorships that are maybe 100,000 to 500,000 a piece.
Okay, wow. So what's the most, I don't know if I'm allowed to ask this question, I'm going to ask it. You don't have to answer it. Let's put it that way. So what's the most amount of money that you've raised for like any one, like let's say one event or one production or whatever you call it? Are you allowed to answer that?
I will answer that question twice. I will answer it for me personally and for what I particularly manage, which is a little bit of a different circumstance. Okay. So me personally, my cap is $3.5 million that I personally raised for an event. A lot of that kind of stuff is under NDA when you start reaching those sums of money. So unsurprisingly, I'm sure you're aware that there's going to be a lot of people who would be very hesitant to actually release those details. Sometimes I get a yes. It was for a car-related project. Now, as far as a management team, we actually, especially with R&R Resources, one of the companies that I'm a huge proponent of and I'm the vice president of, is they actually act as a sponsorship management team. Instead of directly going out and raising the funds, what they'll do is they'll buy out brokerages and manage the entire product on each other's toes. So instead of somebody paying large sums of money to an IEG or somebody like that, we'll probably drop around to $20,000 which can be kind of acquisitions.
Oh, I got you skipping a little bit. I can't hear you right now. Okay, yeah, we lost you there.
We're back. So did any of the words I said get lost?
Some of it did. So you were talking about, you talked about yours, like 3.5 million, I think you said, and then you started talking about the group, and then that's where I lost you.
Oh, so yeah, when we purchase out, we essentially buy out some of the more famous names and sponsorship that most are able to hire those people is either they don't have a lot of upfront money, like $7.5 grand, 20 grand for some of these people. I raise for the reporting, and our company handles some of those components, brokerages and agencies, and then goes and raises it. So our network of brokerages and agencies, independent raisers, and all that, have raised, I think it's something like $1.5 billion over the last 10, 20 years. Yeah. So I as somebody who's been in it for just over a decade, 11 years now, I am not the old dog in the room. I'm old enough to know what I'm doing and still be dangerous. The old guys are 20, 30 years of sponsorship.
Wow. And then you think that with the time, like the changing times, going to the internet being so it's like so in the forefront of everything. And so do you think that the change in times, like have they kept up? A lot of those people have been 20, 30 years.
Absolutely.
To, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the sponsorship industry is growing nonstop by like 5% every year or more. And it's not even just the sponsorship market where you find sponsorship dollars. Sometimes you find it in diversity. Sometimes you actually find it in HR. There's a lot of people who I've seen sponsor events just to find the appropriate client to hire or the appropriate person to hire. There were some people who've done very, very well, and they said, you know what, we'll sponsor 10, 20,000 towards this event. We just want you to let people know that we're actually trying to acquire new people and hire people straight out of the event. We'll consider this a win. And they hired 15 core members of their staff.
That's awesome. I would never have thought that route. So that is really cool information. I love it. I want to get into the top 3 mistakes. So what are they? You're going to tell us what they are. I have a note here I made myself. It's here. This is the one thing I wanted to bring up is that I've heard from some people, actually from most people, maybe all people except you, is that 100% of your event should be covered by sponsorships. And you say, no, that is wrong.
I say that is the exact opposite of what you want to do.
Yeah, so let's hear it. I want to hear this.
So that's actually mistake number 1, and that's assuming that sponsorship will pay for a production that's in the red. Now, certainly, if you have a production that's going to be in the black, let's say a music festival or something like that has high-end A-list talent, and you've already got the tickets sold out. Technically speaking, the amount of sponsorship dollars you can raise will in fact be able to pay for your event simply because you already have all the components that make the event successful, and then the amount of sponsorship dollars that you've raised happens to be in excess of that number. But you absolutely do not want to back into any production, whether it's an event, a musical contract, anything like that, or especially if you have to hire hard talent, you do not want to back into it, assuming that sponsorship dollars will be there. A lot of the sponsor companies, like Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, those kind of people, are very competent in what they do. They're always trying to hire sponsorship management team directly from some of the best raisers, which means these people have already been through all of this and they know when an event is going to be successful way in advance. So when you try to back into an event, they're going to notice that you don't have the content locked down, the quality, actors or musicians or whatever, your speakers if you're a business conference, they're going to know these things. And they do know these things, and they very quickly are able to identify those components. So when you're looking at how you're going to back into an event, if you don't have something you're expecting for sponsorship dollars to come in, most of the higher end sponsorship dollars don't even come into the third event. Ironically as well, most events don't become profitable until the third event. So the third event just seems very sexy when it comes to an organizer. But the first event, your goal is to break even. And maybe if you can acquire some sponsorship dollars from the 10 miles around your event, and that money is going to just kind of help you break even. Those people are getting it because they want, local restaurants. They want people to go into the restaurant or alliance partners or something like that, in-kind trading. And then the second event is where you'll start to see things really tighten up. And then the third event, by then, you'll actually look to make some money and really get some serious sponsorship dollars.
Yeah, we talked about, I talked to you about my situation with events. So my first event, I like to call it as I educated myself really quickly with a lot of money. It was like $70,000. My husband, thank goodness, he really supports me and my vision and my mission, because he wasn't happy about it, but he wasn't like, oh my God. And then I held my next event, which would be my second event. And that one, we lost a lot less. Like we actually kind of gained, if you look at it that way, 700%, which was good. But I still lost money in that one. So I remember you talking to me, you said, well, your next one is technically your third event, even though those were two different events.
Correct.
Technically, yeah. So the next one should be better.
You do have a history of raising, and that says a lot of really good stuff. But there was also some other things that you mentioned about that and your core team of people that were helping you raise sponsorship. That's actually the reason why we started 11th Hour to begin with. We noticed that there was not a lot of confidence when you're trying to find a sponsorship raising team. There's no kind of reporting out there that says, hey, these people are legitimate. And there are a few people out there who are training, but when it comes to certification, that certification is not based on results, it's only based off of the training. So when you're looking at those different elements, 11th Hour as a whole, which is one of the companies that I helped found, it exists to have a certification. Tier 1 means you've completed you've shown confidence in the field, you know about reporting, you know how to look at an event and different productions, TV, whatever, brand ambassadorship. Tier 2 is actually where you actually have to have made money from the event. Tier 3 is 100,000 or more you have to have raised. Tier 5, and this is all within the last 2 years that you have to have done this, 500,000, Tier 5, over $1 million. And if you actually go to learnsponsorship.com, you can see a list of companies that have met. Obviously, we're not going to know everybody, and we completely free to be listed on there. Oh yeah, so I see it on there. Learn sponsorship.
Yeah, learnsponsorship.com.
One of the things that make that in your where you've ran 2 events now, you want to make sure that the people around you are competent. You did not lack in manpower. I mean, realistically, you had everybody you needed to run the event. People were very passionate about it, so we offered a training curriculum for that that will support that kind of a setup.
And that's sometimes the hardest thing to do is to get a team that are going to be competent.
One of the first people to actually pass the Learn Sponsorship training curriculum, which included education on everything that I said, and hour raised, which is within the 45 days before the event, joining the event and successfully raising money for the event, is Anthony Savastano. He actually just walked in.
Oh, bring him on.
Can you come around over here? Yeah, Anthony, come on over here.
Is he dressed properly? Just kidding.
Well, Anthony's a handsome guy.
Hi, Anthony.
The camera's over here. Look over here.
Hello, Linda. Pleasure to meet you.
So Anthony actually came from a completely different field. He did over $10 million in sales. He actually comes from a sales background, and the company didn't support him, so he wanted to join a new way where he was able to be heart forward, help and support companies, and do a really good thing. So he joined actually the first training group, and now has come on. Go ahead.
Why don't you share with us your experience, Anthony?
Anthony can't actually hear you.
Now I have a headphone in.
She has to share your experience.
Yeah, share your experience.
Of course. Sure. Ryan was dedicated to holding 2 trainings a week with myself and another team. Some of the other team is still around. A lot of them didn't have the commitment that I did to the training.
That's right.
So we did the training for about 6 months. It was phenomenal. A lot of content, different subjects such as Maslow's hierarchy of needs were covered, just bettering ourselves along with training for sponsorships. And I've never felt better after the trainings. I've never felt more competent. And I'm super excited for our team that we're building here at R&R Resources.
Checks in the mail.
It's going to bring a lot of success for everybody, not just myself.
Yeah, so Anthony actually did so well that R&R Resources, the company that I'm a vice president of, actually brought him on and has actually placed him in charge of the sponsorship division.
Wow.
This is my right-hand man with a lot of those components. He came on. He mentioned some very interesting things. The sponsorship training, some of the important things about it is because a lot of the times you're making calls for 8 hours a day. One of our 160 calls in an 8-hour period. Very successful. I know. He absolutely crushed it. He currently holds the record. I've never heard of anybody beating it. But your mental health has to be kept high as well. And the way that you're showing up to people, even over the phone, people know that. So there's a lot of additional tips and tricks and direct methods. Everything is process-based methods to keeping yourself motivated, able to stay on the phone, making sure that you're checking in with integrity, checking in with your body posture even before you make those phone calls. There's a lot of those tips that are generally helpful for everybody, I feel.
Agreed.
Well, what I think is what I heard from what Anthony was saying is that it's there's a lot of self-development as well that's happening through the program, which is really awesome, because that self-development is going to take you throughout your whole life, no matter what you do, whether you stay here or not. It'll take you through your entire life, and that's really awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it was a great experience, and Ryan is a great guy to work with.
Yeah, but having that, so you made a difference, right? So there was something different with you that you selected to maybe work harder, stronger, whatever it was, that made you excel more than some of the other students. And, that's a credit to you, because you didn't have to do that. So awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Let's also test Anthony. Anthony, on the top 3 mistakes that a person would make, what is number 2?
Number 2?
Yeah, even some of the clients that we go ahead and speak to, what is one of the top mistakes that they would make?
Not building any sort of rapport or following up.
Right here, and whether or not they assume that it's free philanthropic money.
Oh, the free.
So,
right.
So most people assume in sponsorship.
Uh-oh, did I lose you again?
Money.
Okay, we're skipping a little bit here. So you're talking about the number 2 mistake that a lot of people do. What?
Assume that it's a free philanthropic money source. That sponsors are doing it because they care about your project. Now, what Anthony was saying was not free about the outreach and how they craft that story. And that's going to be number 2 mistake, jumping back to that, about assuming that it's free philanthropic money, is a huge, big mistake, because sponsorship, very different than a donation or a gift, is directly somebody giving you money for something in return, whether it's a story associated with the production, the project. Sometimes it's a media spend. They want their name to be branded in places. There's a direct correlation. Many times they get VIP tickets to the event as well. They definitely get some sort of a booth spot if it's like a business conference or trade show. But also think about it this way. So Arna Resources has prospecting authority for a lot of famous celebrities. We'll say Flo Rida, we'll say DJ Khaled, we'll say Pitbull, just to name a few. So with that, we are not just going to go to them and say, hey, Adidas or whoever wants to just give you a bunch of money, or Nike wants to give you a bunch of money to talk about their project. They frankly don't care. People give them that pitch all day long. So they're not going to accept. Mm-hmm. What the story is very different, what we do with Arna Resources, and what Anthony is actually one of the founders of this idea, is going to like an Adidas or a Nike and say, okay, here's what we'd like you to do. We do want you to sponsor DJ Khaled, and we'll know he'll accept. But you're also going to spend $300,000 to $500,000 on building inner city schools and raising the educational budget of a town. DJ Khaled will be your spokesman for it, that project specifically, and talk about how awesome it is that Nike, Adidas, whatever, is going to actually take part in making the world a better place. That creates a story. Now, if you're not going that route with it, and you're not creating a scenario where there is a direct deliverable for that sponsorship dollar, they're not interested. And that go ahead. You look like you have something you want to say.
No, that's interesting. I'm just trying to think about how that works, like dollar wise, like how you decide on a dollar amount that is going towards that effort,
Well, so what's interesting about that is that's probably the most philanthropic that sponsorship dollars get. And when it comes to a dollar amount, you would analyze the project and figure out what the project costs plus 30%, just so that there's a little bit of extra. So whatever the project plus sponsor towards maybe, and then usually most celebrities with talent have an amount that offers usually come in at. So DJ Khaled, actually let's use Emma Watson. Emma Watson was sponsored by, I think it was Gucci for over $1 million, like $1.5. Beyonce had a thing for $11 million in 2016. So you know where offers are coming in at. That's pretty well reported on, and the agencies want you to know because that's their client. They get a piece of that.
Right.
So that information is usually pretty prevalent. Did that answer your question?
Well, yeah, it does. It's just interesting how I don't understand the whole sponsorship thing. So there's a lot of elements to it, and it can be very confusing. But let's talk about number 3 then. What's the number 3 mistake?
The number 3 is about outreach, and that it's not just crafting the story, which we just talked about a little bit of, the whole story that's being told via the sponsorship, but also how much activity they're having. We talked about that kind of when I first got on here about having good social media, having press releases and stuff like that, having news reporting on you. These kind of components tell a story that says a lot of information about your event, your production, whatever. If I can't Google your event name, production, or whatever, and see a history of content that's been put out, I'm not going to believe that it's really real. And even if you have the sexiest numbers possible, it's not going to be relevant to me because it's not going to be consistent. And consistency of outreach is the most hands down important thing out there when it comes to analytics. Because even if you have an event, honestly, even if you have an event that sucks, as long as it's good enough to meet baseline criteria and it's going to reach out to the people, enough people that gets the eyeball numbers, there are many sponsors who will give you money just for that outreach component. Now, in integrity, you want to make sure that your event is as amazing as possible and that people have a good time because they're going to talk about it, and that's going to be part of your outreach. So crafting that story, I think probably Gary Vee said it best in his book, Jab, 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 Right Hook, Jab, 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 Right Hook, where he talks about treating yourself like a media company and how to engage with the world around you and how to engage with the market. So outreach is like probably the biggest component, and I definitely would say, my opinion is it is the highest component.
Yeah, that's a great book too. Jab, 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 Right Hook by Gary Vaynerchuk. Just like the concepts. It's like, well, duh, right? Some books it's you read it and it's like, oh, duh, that just makes total sense.
And a lot of people you would think that, but then a lot of times when people are discussing that subject matter, when you go to their Facebook, Twitter, all you see is a list of buy my next thing now, buy my next thing now. And it's like 12 posts deep of, no, I'm really promoting this thing. So that's not going to be effective.
Yeah.
I saw a question just pop up.
Yeah, we're going to put it up on the screen. So I'm going to put it up on the screen. And so it's Catherine. She asks, where is the best place to learn about getting sponsorships for a talent by using their product in your business? The name of his company or training again, please. Oh, so this is the name of the company. But so if you can you see the question there, Ryan?
I saw it for a brief moment. Can you put it back up for me?
Okay. Yeah. I wasn't sure if you were able to see in the background.
Or paraphrase it.
Okay. Where's the best place to learn about getting sponsorship for a talent?
For a talent. So I want to make sure that I understand that correctly. My understanding, and I want to know if you get this too, is they're interested in finding sponsorship for like a musician or for or like maybe a speaker, a public speaker or something like that. Is that how you understood the question too?
That's how I understood. Yeah, because for a talent, yes, it's by using their product in your business.
I'm not sure that I understand that component of it.
So why don't you answer it like what you think it means?
Equestrian. Interesting.
Equestrian, yeah.
So I would never back into hiring talent via sponsorship dollars. Specifically, and I've seen that happen in an event. We had an event that happened maybe in 2014, 2015, not us, but somebody who wanted the contract and hire some of our related personnel that hired a A-list name musician. And they signed the contract before agreeing to anything, before having any funding or anything like that. And then they tried to back into the sponsorship dollars. Now, hard off going to freely willy-nilly promote a product that's handed to them, because that's a completely separate thing that they get 100% of the money from most of the time. And they're not going to be interested in de-elevating their brand, de-escalating their brand by talking about somebody else's project and production when, let's say, they're going to an event to speak or do music or whatever. So most of the time, you would want to, through independent investment, bridge financing, loans, etc., pay for all of your talent. even if your event location is not paid for yet. A lot of event locations don't have the money dropped to it until maybe the month of or the month before, maybe a little deposit in advance. But the actual talent itself usually requires a hard offer, and you have to pay. So I would not back into it at all. Now, if I was going to do it, I can tell you how I would.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Let's hear it.
If I was ever to back into it, and I highly recommend against this, what I would do is first off, the person would have to be very free, open. You'd probably have to have a relationship with those people. Usually you'd want to have a charity associated with the production so that there's an emotional angle to go with. Again, I would not recommend doing this because you end up with a lot of liability to go through. I would set a time in which the money would be paid, that you reasonably think. You say, the money will be deposited into whatever account at this date, and that's when you can consider it locked in if that's how you want to do it. But we're gauging interest to see if this is even a production you want to do. From there, I would go out and try to find sponsorship if that was the route I was going to do. Again, I highly recommend actually just having the funds in hand, hiring the talent, and then seeking sponsorship maybe a year out, at least 3 months out or more. It puts you in a lot of danger doing it that way.
Well, and that brings up a great question about sponsorships too, because I understand sponsors are on they're on a deadline. They have their fiscal year when it starts and everything, and you want to make sure you get your sponsorship packets or whatever into them by when?
Right. So October usually. You want to get it before they start setting those budgets, depending on the company. October, November, and that's what you just said is not a hardline truth. Actually,
I think we're having a connection issue right now. Oh.
That's the year.
Okay, so Ryan, I missed you there. You said because I mentioned the fiscal deadline, and you said October 1st, and then you said something about the truth or not the truth. I wasn't sure what you said.
Yeah, it's not quite 100% the truth. Yes, if you want, especially big sum monies like $1 million or more, or even in some cases 150,000 or more, you want to get those in by October, November. Otherwise, you're going to have to hope that the company is going to submit a budget proposal to adjust their budget and hope that it gets changed. On some occasions, especially PepsiCo is a really big proponent of being willing to be interested in that kind of a subject matter. There are companies that will do that. The second place that you're going to find money is in the discretionary budget of a company. There are, especially a lot of the bigger companies have a discretionary budget. Some of the smaller companies will have a discretionary. Pepsi, those kind of guys have a discretionary budget already. So that is an incredible way, especially if you're looking for some last-second money to try and get in there maybe 2 months before the event, 3 months before the event. The people within 10 miles. Right?
I was going to mention, because at my first event, I had it. We only posted it on Facebook for like 3 months before the event, and I didn't have any sponsors. And a week before the event, Anheuser-Busch contacted me, and they talked to me. They wanted to talk to me about sponsorships. Well, it was in the middle of the year. It was July, so we missed any deadline. But they did have a discretionary budget that was their local funds in San Diego that they could spend however they wanted. And we didn't have enough time to get it from them because it was only a week. But it was just cool for me to know that's like, oh my gosh, that like I could reach out to Anheuser-Busch for money. I had no idea. I didn't think about it. You know what I mean? Yeah, absolutely.
And that's not an atypical situation, especially if you're putting out publicity or they realize that something is very attractive to their target market. But a lot of the time, especially when you're looking at something like a discretionary budget, you also have to be very present of when that discretionary budget refreshes. Some people it refreshes every year. Some people every quarter. Some people it refreshes every month. Some people it refreshes at pick times across the year. So it's always worth a question if you're speaking authentically to somebody saying, by the way, do you have a discretionary budget for projects like this? Have you ever had a discretionary budget like this? Does your discretionary budget refresh during the year at any time so you can take advantage of any market opportunities? These are all very important questions to find money and financing for the sponsorship portion.
I love that. So who do you pick? Who do you call? And if you're doing cold call, you don't know who to speak to.
Yeah.
Like, what department do you ask for? Who do you ask for?
Marketing. Some people have a sponsorship department. Sometimes it has to be the decision maker of the company. Sometimes it's the CFO. Sometimes it's HR. Sometimes it's there's a lot of different media relations, depending on what you're trying to get sponsored. And that's something about outreach as well. Depending on what you're trying to get sponsored specifically will determine who you talk to. For example, if you're trying to do that setup where they maybe sponsor a mental health or a wellness tent or something like that at an event, there are people who might be interested in hiring people for their company. Well, if people are interested in hiring people for their company, then that's going to go from their HR budget, because they're going to do prospecting and headhunting. So from their HR budget, sometimes that tent gets paid for, and it showcases the company as willing to care about their employees in a good light. That is an attractive sponsorship program,
Yeah.
But you just have to do it right, and it has to fit, the budget you're going for. If you're going for the diversity budget, there are lots of sponsorships, as I'm sure people can imagine, that specifically target whatever demographic and diversity that they're interested in. And usually a big company's diversity budget matches sponsorship budgets. Some companies publicly report that. Sometimes it's just the market reporting it.
Okay. Well, gosh, that's great information. I love it. It's always nice to know like who you need to go talk to. Just pick up the phone, dial the number, and ask for that department. I mean, it's
absolutely.
Like, yeah. Well, you guys do 20 calls an hour, right? 20
minimum.
an hour.
Yeah, we have a minimum quota for our new trainees. People who are not yet a tier 1 raiser or not yet even a tier 2 raiser. We have a minimum requirement quota of 20 calls an hour to build relationships, specifically to build relationships. Frankly, to build consistency, because especially if they're hearing from you for the first time, as Sav is very well aware, Anthony, is that they want to hear from you multiple times to prove that you're real. So if you get a no on a phone, don't take that as a hard no. If they say no, say fantastic, just so you know, we'll be doing this every year, and we think that it does fit you. Is it okay if I reach out to you next week just to see if this is, if your budget's refreshed, or even next month? Because we're going to do this event, and we'd love to keep you informed in the loop. Now, very rarely, if you're coming authentically and you're not being a dick about it, for lack of a better term, they'll say, yes, we want to hear from you. Right. And some of our best relationships have come from people, them saying no to us, and us saying, well, fantastic, we've got other events on the table that are always coming across. If one fits you, we'd love to reach back out to you at that point in time. And you know what, let's just catch up once a month so I can tell you what's on our docket. And now suddenly we've got these amazing alliances that span industries.
I love that, because it's basically the message here is don't be too scared to talk to them. Just never hesitate. In fact, if I can give you a top tip from the training that we offer, before you speak to anybody, choose 3 words in your head. Mm-hmm. Choose 3 words in your head. It's a neurolinguistic trick. And what that's going to do is it's going to prime the way that your brain activates and how you speak to somebody. For example, it's off the same mentality of if you say you're sick repeatedly in your head, if you're like, oh, I feel sick, even if you're healthy, what happens? You get sick.
Of course you get sick, right? And whether it's considered a placebo effect or psychosomatic or energy or whatever you want to say actually ends up being the cause, the results are there. You say you're sick in your head, you become sick. So to some extent, the same thing happens if you say you're healthy. But also, how does that apply when human interaction is happening? If you say, I want to be, I intend to show up, I'm showing up, we'll say it in the active tense, I'm showing up to be educational, loving, and enthusiastic, that's how you're naturally going to show up. You can choose 3 words at any time and change the framework that your mind's working under. So if you choose words that are associated with how you want to speak to potential sponsors, and how you want to directly affects the amount of money that you can raise.
That's interesting. Okay, so the words that you want to choose are ones that are kind of surrounded around you and like how you want to act or show up when you are talking to them. Would that kind of
absolutely
be accurate?
Yeah, that's very accurate. In fact, we do this as an internal process at R&R Resources. Everybody does this as part of our mental health. We care a lot about the mental health of everybody that's working with us. So we do this. And Sav, what's your number? You have a number one word, actually.
I use a verb.
Yeah, use the verb.
I use a verb. It's achieve.
Achieve, yeah.
Yes.
So every day, Sav has a list of 3 words, and sometimes those 3 words change. But the primary word that he focuses everything around is a verb, because verbs create action, which means it's going to be active oriented. So if you're ever feeling lethargic and you go, 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 which is a verb, then you'll suddenly create action. He uses achieve to remind himself to always be creating action, to always be going for the biggest amount of excellence possible from himself, and expect that same thing from other people, and encourage their growth and motivation. So it doesn't sound necessarily like it's sponsorship related, but it's so is going to breed their behavior as well. If you show up timid, then they're going to assume that you have no idea what you're doing with your production. If you show up loving and supportive, they're going to say, oh my God, I love that heart-forward person and I want to help them however I can.
Yeah, so it's important to not go into a conversation, or any conversation, desperate, because if you are going into it desperate, then you appear desperate, and people, like you said, they can recognize that, they can feel that energy, and so I like that, going into it as achieve. I like that, because it goes into the conversation knowing that I'm going to achieve. For me, it'd be like achieving success in some way. So maybe it's just making a relationship, you know, and it's all about relationship building. Sponsorships it's all about relationship building, right?
It is exactly correct. In fact, that's the biggest proponent of why we started R&R Resources the way that we did. It has to do with, you know, the best brokerages. If you were to make a list of the top 20, 30 brokerages that exist in America, spending months and months of time Googling them and finding them and following up to verify their authenticity, you would find that each of them has 5,000, 8,000 relationships that they've built over the last 20 years that allow them to actually directly access decision makers and raise that money. So anybody who's starting out, you know, you're going to want to reach out and make those relationships. And especially if you have an event or a production that's local to your city, you're not part of the Chamber of Commerce. You're doing yourself a service. They exist literally to support your city. They literally exist to try and make sure that the city is the best case scenario possible. So if you bring something that increases the value of the city, they want to support you. And I'm not saying that you should think of it like an old boys club. I very much so care about you than me. Like if you're meetups.com, there's this is
getting really spotty again. Darn it. I love the internet.
.com that own businesses. Reach out to those people.
So I don't know if you can hear me, Ryan, but you're very spotty, and I'm hearing maybe every 10 or 20 words or something. Can you hear me? Okay. Well, Ryan, can you hear me? Okay, so I have up on the screen Resources Reserve. That's the company he has. Then he also has the Learn Sponsorship, and that's where you can, you know, learn about doing sponsorships, getting sponsorships yourselves.
I don't.
Hello? Darn, I had a really good question to ask him too. I was going to ask him, can you hear me, Ryan? Okay, I'm going to send you, if you can hear me, I'm going to send you down to the lobby. So hold on just a second, everybody. And send him down. I'm going to bring him back up and see if that makes a difference. No, it didn't. He's going to have to come back in. Okay, well, shoot, I had a really good question for him. I wanted to ask him about, you know, getting sponsorships for like a book launch. Oh, wait, he's back. Hold on a second. We're going to try this again. Okay, can you hear me, Ryan? Darn, because I really wanted to ask him about doing like a book launch, because I've heard, and I don't know how this would work, I think it'd be interesting, is I've heard you can get sponsorships for a book launch, and just to find out like what that's all about. I don't know if he deals with anything like that. I know they deal with, you know, bigger money, So they might not even deal with something like that, but he might have some good tips for us. So maybe what I'll do is in the comments below, I'll ask that question and see if I can get him to get a response for us on that. Yeah, he's still locked up. Oh, he left. He might be back though. So sponsorships, you hear a lot of information about sponsors for big products, but there's also sponsorships that you can get for smaller things. For example, I've heard of people getting sponsorships, like for maybe a $500 sponsorship. Maybe you want to hold a networking event and you would like your networking event to be sponsored. You can do that. You can reach out for $100 here, $100 there. You just need to reach out to people and ask them for sponsorships. Ask them if they want to sponsor your event. Now, the thing is, remember, they're giving you money. This is not a donation. You need to perform for them. They're going to actually pay you money so that they can be in the limelight. I like to say it that way, so that they can be in the limelight and they can be seen by your audience. And what that means is that you have to actually advertise for them. You have to put their name out there. You have to do whatever it is that you say that you're going to deliver to them. So sometimes, for example, there might be a networking event where there are some table sponsors. And so I've seen events where there's like a company's name in the middle of the table and there's like 8 or 10 people around the table and the company's name is in the middle of the table. And then when the announcer is announcing, talking about the sponsors, they will say, thank you to XYZ company, thank you to ABC company for sponsoring the event. And so they make sure that they mention the sponsors so that they get their name out there. You might have a program, and if you do, you want to put their name in the program. There's so many different things that you can do to advertise your sponsor without breaking the bank. You still might need to spend some of their sponsorship dollars so that you can make the event happen. But it's really about sponsorships, is about helping advertise, get their name to be seen by those eyeballs, like he was talking about, whether it's 100 eyeballs, 400 eyeballs. It's about making sure that your sponsor is seen by those eyeballs. That's up to you to do that. You have to deliver whatever it is that you say that you're going to deliver. Now, I have seen occasion, it looks like Ryan's trying to come back. It didn't work. I've seen occasion where somebody, and actually I heard this when I went to Anheuser-Busch, and they told me that sometimes people don't actually fulfill their obligation. So I'm just talking about Anheuser-Busch. When I talked to them, Ryan, are you able to hear me? Are you able to hear me? Okay, I don't think he can hear me. So I don't think he can hear me. So, Ryan, are you able to hear me?
Hello.
Yes, can you hear me? I think he's emailing me. But so I wanted to share when I was talking to Anheuser-Busch, one of the things they shared with me is that a lot of times they'll get sponsors they'll get people coming in asking for sponsorship dollars. And then Anheuser-Busch will give them the sponsorship dollars. And Ryan, can you hear me? He's not able to hear me. Darn. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, so people would ask for sponsorship dollars, and then Anheuser-Busch would give them the sponsorship dollars, and then they would basically disappear and not fulfill their obligation. Well, that's going against your reputation. That is your reputation that you need to protect there. Because let's say next year you want to come back and you want to ask that company for the same amount, maybe even more money. If you haven't been able to deliver the promise that you have promised them, why are they going to give you some more money? So always think of future. Always think of the future, because if you're going to want to come back to ask for more, you need to make sure that you've fulfilled that promise. So I'm going to try Ryan again. Ryan, can you hear me? Okay, I'm going to kick him out, and I'm going to try to bring him back up one more time. So we're just having a connection problem. Hey, that's part of going live. Let's see here. Ryan, can you hear me now? Darn. Well, I'll keep him on the screen there and I'll share with you guys. So this is his website, learnsponsorship.com. Go check it out if you're interested in finding sponsors, and they can help you. If you want to reach out to Ryan, let me know. And see, Antonia says, this has been more focused on sponsorship for events. let's say in regards to, and darn, I can't bring him on. Let me see if you can hear me now. Can you hear me, Ryan?
This has been more focused on sponsorship for events. Let's say in regards to a band or even a broadcasting program, where can I find information about what to prepare and how to approach potential sponsors? From Antonia, Washington. So I have no idea necessarily if you can see this, but assuming that you can and that everything's working over here, I can answer that question. So in regards to finding sponsorship for a band or a broadcasting program, we actually have an amazing client, WBTVN, which is Shay Vaughn, Women's Broadcasting Television Network. And one of the amazing things about that, media program sponsorships, which is what that is, it's not readily available information. Certainly we teach it at learnsponsorship.com. But when it comes to the ways to go out and actually engage for that, there's some other subject matters. Because in the idea and premise that everything can be sponsored, there is some amazing industry leaders in sponsorship training. Roberto Candelaria is a great source. He wrote a book called Relationships Raise Money. Relationships Raise Money is one of my favorite books of all time. I actually make sure that every single person in R&R Resources internal team has read that book. And you'll find a lot of information that you're looking for in there as well. Looking for media sponsorship, you're actually going to want to Google the term CPM. CPM is an analytic that is used by marketing companies to determine how valuable and how many eyeballs are reached, specifically for media companies and things like that, or the social media of a band. You can actually track these numbers and have a very competent CPM conversation. Go ahead and Google CPM, and it stands for cost per 1,000 impressions, because M is a Roman numeral. So when you actually are actively having that competent conversation with them, a lot of it will be trial and error on your part. If you're trying to find the right analytics for your social media for a band or something along those lines, then you're actually going to want to use a website that tracks those things like Syfe, which you can create a free account for, CYFE.com. And just to be clear, they don't pay me anything, but I do use their services. Syfe allows you to have a very amazing way to analyze the data. You log in, you'll directly log into your Facebook groups or whatever into Syfe, and it will track a 30-day period of time that you can definitely, and I should encourage you to screenshot and have available for anybody who's interested in that content. So, which would be, a potential sponsorship company. The people who you're going to be really honestly looking for in as a band are either going to be music companies or local people. If you are a local band, we'll say, not necessarily a touring band, but let's say you're a local band and you're looking for sponsorship, you're probably going to get between $200 and $500 to mention them from stage over a month period of time as you go to other venues. So you probably won't want to use a venue as sponsorship because that'll piss off your clients, frankly, if you're talking about other venues in which you play. Many people do this anyway, so it does seem seamless. Oh, come see us next week at wherever they're playing. But if you have a local, bank, usually they're willing to do that kind of a thing. A local food company, and say, this pizza place, by the way, I want you to know, everybody, as we've continued going on our journey as a band, we'll say Papa John's. Papa John's has continued to feed us. They literally feed us. So please go to Papa John's and use our coupon code the next time you order. Not only will you be helping support the band, but you'll get 10% off your purchase, or whatever that is. The local regional manager will usually, for a food distribution place like a Taco Bell or a Papa John's or something like that, will be able to make that decision, and that'll be a few extra $100 inside your bank account. Also, if you are a band, join the Chamber of Commerce. I encourage you to take part of that, specifically because, and I know it sounds strange because you're not really a business, but you are, to point out somebody who is very successful with this. Taylor Swift, for those of you who do not know, she started off and got her entire career playing in the Amazon's cafeteria. You can Google this, you can hear people who tell stories about it. Amazon's cafeteria. She did it for no fee. She just played in Amazon's cafeteria. And she leveraged the relationship she was building every day as she played in that cafeteria in order to get all the business competent information that she needed to get, and also to find the people who were originally going to invest into her career. And because she did that, she was able to find the people that, made her the Taylor Swift that we all know and love and listen to songs, whether it's Bad Blood or whatever. So I encourage you, if you're a band and you're a not regional band, somebody who's going to do tours, those tours themselves get sponsorship, not so much the band. Bands sometimes have a sponsorship that usually involves media spend and commercial, but usually, the sponsorships of events are handled by that town's committee or a major sponsor who's going to sponsor the entire production of a city tour. We'll say Rough Riders. We've had some conversations with those people. We have some conversations with Grateful Dead and some of those people who engage in deals exactly like what you're talking about. So assuming I see some updates, I see things being put along the bottom about the website. Is there any other questions that are out there that?
Well, I had a question.
Go ahead and answer.
Yeah, I had a question. Can you hear me? Oh, he can't hear me.
Learnsponsorship.com. So that's absolutely, the website that teaches and educates people on, and when I say people, I mean it educates people on sponsorship. I cannot hear you. Wow, that's amazing. We can still communicate. So yes, learnsponsorship.com is a website that exists for three real purposes: to teach and educate people on how to find sponsorship, both teaching them how to find the dollars specifically to them. It's not just some web videos. It is actual live training, by the way. It will be digital, but it will be live training. We will do it online. We'll use a recording software. We'll use something like Zoom so you can interact directly. I can share screen with you. I can show you and walk you through the process that is actually utilized, and will be very specific to your industry.
Yes, I know he can't hear me.
There's a question from Antonia Washington. It seems like it, but just wanted to make sure, are those resources you mentioned also applicable to internet broadcasts similar to Linda's? Like lynda.com? Oh, I see. I thought you were talking about lynda.com. Absolutely. Like this one right here that we're on. Absolutely.
This Linda.
So there is a lot of ways to view and analyze broadcast impressions. It's a little bit more difficult with things like this, podcasts as well. Usually the internal stuff will showcase that information. SIFE probably won't have a whole lot for somebody who's tracking something like this. However, all those resources like the Chamber of Commerce and people who have those kind of interests absolutely matter. The same things that you would use for something like a broadcast TV, all of those things are the exact same. Now, when you're doing that though, you do want to be very careful because people will try to lump you into a completely different type of deal. Similar to the Papa John's thing I mentioned, what you want to avoid is sponsorship dollars based on the amount of people you send my way. Yes, I understand in the reporting aspect, they are in the end essentially paying for exactly that. However, the point of a sponsorship is to build a relationship with its audience. If you continue to hit people with the same content all the time that's making asks, nobody has any interest in that component. Oh, I see Linda now. I can't hear you, but I can see you.
It's because I was muted.
Oh, there we are.
Okay, awesome. Okay, I popped myself out, and I was like, I popped myself out and come back in. Well, that's awesome. I'm glad we were able to communicate without communicating. Isn't that awesome?
I realized that everything was still on and working when I started seeing the little tags pop up across the bottom of the screen.
It's so funny. I love it. It's fun. Well, I want to thank you guys for your questions. Those are great questions. But I had a question, and it's related to like a book launch. I've heard that some people will sometimes get their book launch sponsored. Do you know anything about that?
Yes.
Like, what's the best way to go about it?
The best way to go about it. That is opinion oriented. a book launch has a lot of different things. First off, I'm gonna go ahead and tell a piece of information for anybody who wants to be an Amazon #1 bestseller that I'm sure a lot of people would be very upset for me just sharing. So becoming an Amazon #1 bestseller, not actually very meaningful and very easy to do. All you do is you build a list of about 300 or so people, and you set a time in which it's going to release. You set a bunch of publicity of when it's going to be released, and it can be completely amongst friends and cost you $0. And then when the book is released, you set a Kindle version or something like that for free, and then people all immediately purchase it. Because of the amount of actions taken to purchase the book at that time, you immediately become a bestseller. Once you have something like a bestseller, even if it's just for one chapter of the book, again, you don't want to necessarily do this with your whole book because you're probably in it to make money somehow. But for even just the first chapter for free to release it so that people can see it on the Kindle viewer and tell you whether or not they like the book, not only are you going to be building a list, but also very quickly you'll become an Amazon #1 bestseller. Once you have a credit title like that, whether it's Amazon #1 bestseller or any number of other accolades you can get, that's when you want to go to a sponsor or sponsors and say, hey, I've got a book treatment, which is what they call them. It's just like a little treatment that tells about the book that you want to write. And then you say, I would like you to sponsor my book. By the way, I released just the first chapter, and just the first chapter is an Amazon #1 bestseller. First off, even if they're aware of what that means and they're aware that you probably just kind of gamed the system a little bit, frankly, I would not care, because you're still going the extra effort to get the viewership. And if people actually have, reviews of that first chapter and say that they like it, that's going to be very attractive. That's probably the route that I would go about releasing a book. I would start by just releasing the first chapter, get the accolades that I needed, build a relationship with people, and have them also support it.
That's so interesting. I would never have thought of that. That's cool. So you can just release the first chapter, have it go to #1, and then you've got that behind you, and then you can possibly get sponsors through that. Because like you said, it's about showing them that you are actually going to put in the effort to do something, right?
Absolutely. And the different things that you'll probably get sponsored, whether it's depending on the type of book, because fantasy, of course, has a different than, let's say, a self-help book or something like that. There are, in a self-help book, you might have companies that are associated that will help you out. That is a great sponsor choice. In a fantasy book or something like that, that's for educate or entertainment purposes, the things that you're going to want to get sponsored are like the front cover, because the artwork on a front cover can be cost prohibitive. Sometimes people spend as much as $6,000 or more on a really amazing cover book. I know 3 different people who do amazing front cover art. And one of them actually does a full painting, and then they take the picture of the painting, and you get the painting, and the original, the only copy of it. But buy the books and sits on their bookshelf and looks amazing.
Yeah, there's also
99designs.com. Oh, yeah.
It's $299, and you'll get almost 100 different covers to choose from, and then they'll edit them too. It's so amazing. So I just wanted to share that.
Awesome.
Pop that up.
Absolutely. That would cool. Yes, and always, especially if you're starting out with something like that, you want to bootstrap it as much as possible, right? If you can back into something, absolutely do that. The best reason, honestly, to have somebody expensive, if you are going that route, is because they're bringing their own audience with it. I know many famous artists, as I'm sure you do too, Linda. And if I wanted to take a famous artist, we'll say their list. I have no better way to say that. But if I wanted to take part of their list, I would say they are doing the cover art on my amazing book. It's funny because a lot of games do that too. Magic the Gathering, Wizards of the Coast, one of the most popular card games to ever exist, does amazing artwork on almost every card now, with sometimes very famous artists, and the collectible regardless whether or not the card is.
Oh, interesting. See, all this stuff, I don't even know about all this. I'm so oblivious to all of it. Well, this is awesome. Unfortunately, we got to, let's see, what does it say here? Antonia says, thank you so much, Linda and Ryan. This is so helpful, and I will be looking into your sites and those that you mentioned. Awesome. That's cool. So I'd love to, my whole mission here is just to help people find the shortcuts they can to help themselves, put themselves out there, because I love to help people be seen and be heard. And this is one way to do that. Getting sponsorships to get them out there, be seen and be heard is just another platform. So you guys, I'd love for you to visit learnsponsorship.com. Look for Ryan. And Ryan, do you have any parting words? Like, what's like a really great piece of info you can send us off with? Uh-oh, he froze. Okay, are you back? Shoot, he froze. I put him on the spot and he froze. Wait. Ryan. Oh. Okay, it looks like okay, wait.
I really appreciate everybody who's watched this long. And so if it's my internet's fading in and out here, or what's going on?
Yes, it's going in and out again. But if you can hear me, send us away with
Question.
some like. Oh, go. What?
Oh, we're good. Sorry.
Yeah. So send us off with a really good golden nugget.
Okay, a really good golden nugget.
Put you on the spot. I know, big time, huh?
The best though, no, I definitely know. Whenever you're doing a sponsorship raise, here's my best recommendation. Write ABC on a piece of paper. This is a basic sales process with a twist. A, you're going to list the number of people that you reach out to. B, you're going to list the number of people that you actually connected with and had a conversation. And so we're going to list everybody that you actually had a connection with, that you created a connection from. From that, you can understand how many phone calls that you need to make or how many people you need to reach out to in order to make real connections. And follow up and be consistent with those connections. And specifically, once you have your list of connections, do that for a week. Connect to them and ask them for support in reaching out and connecting. The reason why I say it like that is because the people who you reached out to and jived well enough to build a connection to be in your C analytic, all of those people naturally resonate with you. That is your path of least resistance into finding and building more relationships. For example, how we met. That path of least resistance to finding new relationships is going to those people are going to also be able to have like-minded people that they're aligned with. So if they're aligned, it's likely that you're going to be aligned. So you can waste a lot of time building amazing lists and reaching out to all these people who've never heard of you before and twist them. But once you've consistently done that for a week and actually got a list of people who you have relationships with, ask them for their assistance being introduced to relationships that they know that you will jive with. And because sponsorship is such a relationship-oriented industry, going that route to build the relationships is going to massively increase the amount of dollars that you're going to be able to ship that. And I also say the follow-up to that is always send a thank you card or thank you email to anybody who gives you money for sponsorship. So many people don't, and it burns bridges. So build a relationship, but make sure that relationship at the end has a thank you attached to it, and regardless, like in whatever way it can.
I love that. And that can be applied, the ABC principle can be applied to anything, whether it's sponsorships or just whatever it is that you're doing. So, and I don't know, I never thought of it that way, because I always thought cold call, but like you said, do 1 week, and then that 1 week will build on and just keeps on building the relationship. So, but you've got to put in the effort, make the work, and you've got to make it happen. Right?
Absolutely.
Hey, you guys. Yeah. Well, I want to thank you again for being here. It's awesome. I love the information. Thanks for sharing that. And learnsponsorship.com. You guys go visit that, check out what it's all about, and see if there's something there that Ryan can help you with. Okay? Have
Absolutely.
a wonderful.
Thanks for having me, Linda.
Thank you. See ya.